Alrighty, hello every folks, and good morning. So after completing the speedrun there, I've had a number of things come to mind in terms of the sort of detail that's been on my mind, as well as a couple of other folks' mind that sent some messages in, kind of wondering if it's possible to complete Tactics Ogre Reborn in under the YouTube cutoff limit. So I think it might be possible, because there's actually a lot of little optimizations that, thinking back on it, not only was there a bit of luck involved that might potentially be replaced with something a bit more consistent, there were a lot of mistakes that I think could have been overcome to sort of optimize this whole thing a little bit. So let's go ahead and discuss. So first of all, Chaos Route, that's staying. That is not even remotely close in terms of being a lot faster than the other routes. But as far as the kind of units themselves go, that's where stuff gets a little bit interesting. So for one thing, one of the biggest time losses over the course of the entire run ended up saving, if we were potentially to cut that down to the way that I should have done it, again, sorry, tired brain, it's going to happen. But when it came to the Denim versus Leonard duel, that is dramatically faster to do in a 1v1 if you do it right. In that particular case, it ended up losing about 20 minutes, potentially up to 30 minutes worth of cascade effects, on account of just not doing it right. He's already a Rune Fencer at that point, he's got Ice Blast at that point, just zigzag back and forth. There was no need to switch elements to swap out for anything else. Just taking the left side of the map, running back and forth, using a missile and Boon of Swiftness, that's all that needed to be done. That was just a complete and utter mistake on my end. So in total, if we wanted to get this whole shindig under that roughly like 11 hours 47 cutoff, we're going to go ahead and need to cut off some time there. So I'm going to go ahead and just go with particular numbers here to see if we can beat that. So let's say we started off at what was it, 13:13 as a sort of final time there. That would arguably shave off about 20 minutes. That would get us to about give or take 12:45, right? Depending on how much it goes. And I say cascade effects because I not only had to switch out his elements, switch out all of his spells, switch out all of his equipment, ended up having to kind of rebuild his whole thing a couple of times, and he took that entire time to train up a short bow. All of that would have been completely avoided. We wouldn't have had to potentially sell some extra stuff later because there was some extra shop shenanigans that were required. And additionally, I wouldn't have misplaced his pants, which later went to Olivia. So in that particular case, I think, again, roughly 30 minutes in total probably could have been saved overall. So that would get us to about 12:45. That's already not terribly too far away from the 11:47 cutoff time. Now, a couple of other things. I ended up employing a Terenius over the course of this playthrough, but they ended up getting kind of dropped and replaced with the Sisters later on, just due to being kind of convenient class switches. Because as far as the Knight goes, the whole hit and recruit strategy is very useful early on and sort of drops off because it doesn't work against Lotus. So in that particular case, Voltaire is just fine in terms of where he is, since we're not doing the Shield Bash strategy for Hanging Gardens anymore on account of using the Beast unit to plug the gap instead. So, the one thing that I think would have actually helped quite a decent bit is when it came to the Terenius. Now, she did help defensively with Lament of the Dead, but I think that there's a pretty reasonable use case to be made here to actually swap her out and keep her in the long run by having her be a Dragoon instead. Now, early on, obviously, this the fear that she gives the units is very beneficial. But it's either her or Saria that I think should be a Dragoon later on, because we also, the longest fights by a pretty decent metric, outside of the final boss there, were actually from the Phoenixes and Cockatrice maps. So with the Phoenixes, their whole thing is just you need to basically dedicate one unit to holding off all the Lodician soldiers that are off on the other end, and everybody else has to deal with some very super-powered birds. Now, if we had a Dragoon there, sure, that would help in terms of Slayer, but obviously it's not just them, and specifically, if, for example, here, let's go ahead and set, we're going to go ahead and buy a couple of class marks real quick to show what I mean here. I feel like the Dragoon would end up being a very kind of useful tool in multiple cases here. So we're going to use Saria as an example because, she's already right there. She's already trained with spears. Now, it's actually the spears that I would consider to be the problem here as far as her class goes. And this is why we would also keep around the other unit. So a spear dragoon is all well and good. It would guarantee, for example, the poison on her spear if we went and used Beast Slayer. But Beast Slayer, Beast Bane in particular. Beast Bane helps out a ton with the other White Knights there. So them combining in with their already pretty decently heavy-hitting attacks could help out quite a bit. And additionally, they have Siege, and that's actually the other thing. Being able to bypass units while not having wings is another tool that would have helped a decent bit in a lot of situations. Obviously, in this case, we'd probably want to give her something like this so that she has normal movement. Now, when it comes to a Dragoon in particular, if we're running a Slayer Bane Siege kind of thing, this actually might, in theory, like, for example, if we did this for the Terror Knight, like if we ran two Dragoons here, not only would this speed up a lot of beast maps, especially in Hanging Gardens there, but this also would allow us to run crossbows. Specifically, there is a bowgun that you get relatively early in the game there. And if for actually wait, I just remembered I actually sold the crafting book that's used to make this weapon. Anyway, don't worry, it all comes together. I know it seems like a lot of weirdly specific changes so far. It does come together in a cohesive plan. So the bowgun +1 is one that you get a regular bowgun pretty early. The bowgun +1 is a relatively cheap upgrade for it. Now, around the time that you get access to the Dragoon, you would also get that bowgun, and this would combine in with Slayer. Now, the benefit of this is that it would allow you to not only do the whole siege thing for getting into position a little bit better, it would still give you access to the Bane ability to boost units nearby, but additionally, you're not really suffering as much from that lack of movement due to siege. Because, you know, crossbow and stuff like that, they can still get into pretty reasonable position. On top of this, that particular crossbow has a bonus versus beasts as well, kind of upping its power a little bit more. But on top of that, we now have a guaranteed stun user, and additionally, the kind of elemental coverage on this whole thing ends up working out reasonably nicely. So a lightning element is something that we were sort of missing over the course of this playthrough. There were multiple cases where lightning, lightning finishers were used, but having a lightning unit to assist would have been potentially very useful. So I think the way to actually handle this is to switch out the Terror Knight for Dragoon as soon as that's acquired. Hell, maybe even skip the Terror Knight entirely. As much as the Fear effect has a great benefit for improving your bow damage, most of the targets that the bows are targeting aren't actually the ones that are going to be hit by Fear. The Fear is mostly defensive in this particular case. So, if for example we start off with Crossbow Dragoon relatively early, and then we turn Saria into a Spear Dragoon, that vastly speeds up those couple of maps where there's beast units. There's a couple of maps with dragons as well, but really they're not that much of an issue. You know, potentially it could be useful, but for the most part, it's the beast units that are a problem. Most of the time, we just sort of fly over and deal with stuff. But if we can very quickly deal with those beast units, just very quickly get through Phoenix Hell and the Triple Chicken fight, that could potentially be another about 20 minutes worth of time save that ends up happening. But then also we get to the other thing, one of the most potentially inconsistent things that we ran into over the course of the playthrough, and that is the Ninja. Now, the Ninja was a great tool. He ended up working out fantastically, and the thing is, though, getting a hold of an Envenom Ninja is actually pretty rare the more that I think about it. There's only a couple of times when something like this would ever even come up, let alone rolling the 20 to 40% chance to get one. Even if you have multiple recruiters, it's still likely to fail multiple times, and you don't necessarily want to sit there and keep going for it. I mean, it's going to potentially save you more time than less, but there's actually a slightly more consistent approach at doing this. See, one thing that I didn't notice while actually doing the run here was a mistake that I had made in terms of it putting in Empower Dragon instead of Empower Beast. This meant that having empowered attacks off those beast units would have been available 2 times as often as I already had it. So in this particular instance, actually I guess technically by the end it would have potentially been only about a third time, or a third more. But anyways, those empowered attacks off of beasts are very, very strong, and additionally there's 2 units that provide a ton of value that would have helped financially and saved a lot of menuing. Because I would say there's easily about another 20-30 minutes worth of extra menuing that happens over the course of the playthrough, as I was juggling around items and trying to find things that could afford to be sold, selling crafting books, materials, whatever else, in order to keep affording the items that we needed. Now, we can't obviously replace things like Blessing Stones, Arion Plumes, anything like that, Those are pretty unique effects, but one thing that we can potentially replace over time is going to be our Dynast King's Meads. Originally, in the very first route of this whole thing, this was done through the Zweihander as well as the Volges. Now, we can take out the Volges more or less entirely. It's worth probably taking one rather than two, and we potentially could maybe just switch those out to Fall Strike Rapiers instead. They do help a decent bit, but they're more for kind of inflicting breach on crowds more so than actually using them to deal with bosses. Typically, throwing a Dynast King's Mead either directly by walking up to them or through a Beast Tamer Lobber is generally a lot more effective than trying to get a spear over there, or a Zweihander or whatever else. So the alternative method to this is the octopus. So we're going to go ahead and load up a different save file here to show what I mean. Here, let's go ahead and go down to, where do we have something else here? Let's go ahead and load up this one. And so the thing with the octopus is that the octopus is a long-range breacher. Now, the thing is, I was saying in that initial one that what we needed to do was throw all of those items over onto the beast unit. And yes, all of the charms. Now, quick little explanation on that. Not necessarily charms. So we have specifically mind charms that are going to be very, very useful, specifically for those beast units. Now, the Cockatrice is going to be pretty good at shutting stuff down through petrification, and there's nothing wrong with that particular approach. But potentially, I was just thinking that replacing the ninja with the octopus not only gives you kind of double the odds of actually recruiting one, but additionally gives you a very, very large amount of extra bulk on the team, and potentially allows for even more poison than before. So essentially what we would need to do in this particular case is we would end up running something like this. We've got Aqua Bubble, Poison Rain, Aqua Veil, Dash. They would ideally be looking for auto cards as soon as possible, and if we give them enough Mind Charms, as well as a Mind Ring, which there should be one of in the course of the playthrough, in that particular case, what we would get is somebody that would be able to potentially inflict breach a consistent amount of the time with Aqua Bubble at fairly long range. While it's it's basically the same range as a Lobber. So they more or less would have a renewable source of the Lobber thing as long as they roll their Aqua Veil. Now, Aqua Veil is one of the rarer to roll abilities, so in that particular case they would want to go for as many autos as they could get, but I feel like in general the kind of saves that you would get for doing this could be well worth the effort, especially considering that there's a lot of water on a lot of maps, so they may not need to ever roll their Aqua Veil if everything goes well. Additionally, Poison Rain, in those situations where you do have a bit more, either a bit more water or you do roll your Aqua Veil, if empowered, Poison Rain is potentially a crowd clearer, so that on top of potentially leaving stuff poisoned, I think the Octopus could, in theory, provide a lot more chaos than the Ninja could. And additionally, I think when it comes to the Fairy, we can probably just kind of leave that particular idea behind. While they are beneficial, the Wart Dart Blowgun really just absolutely tears, frankly. So if we can just load up that previous save file here. So one more thing that's worth mentioning is as far as the Wart Dart. Okay, Beast Tamers with darts turned out to be exceptionally good. Due to the fact that we're already running archers, we're going to have Eagle Eye, meaning that most of the time you're going to already have your first attack guaranteed, since Eagle Eye is a relatively common to roll move, and they'll usually end up triggering at the start of the fight. So they'll usually end up acting before the Beast Tamers do, since their equipment is a little heavier. And so in this particular case, essentially what we can do is just kind of give them, either give them a shield, or give them whatever parrying weapon you prefer that they might have joined the party with, and then from there just run blowguns entirely. Seeing as, again, just guaranteed mind control is a very useful tool for spreading apart a party. So potentially using this on both of the two first Beast Tamers and then just leaving Olivia with her Cudgel would have helped a decent bit more there as well. So I think that also possibly could have been a decent time saver. So with all of this combined, and again, I'm probably just going to do a segmented run out of curiosity just to see if it'll work. I think all things considered, it is very possible that this run can be done in like 11:30ish, give or take, which would get under that particular limit. So again, I feel like it could be done because we did make a lot of very particular mistakes that could have potentially cascaded into a bit of slowdown over time. We took a lot of extra menuing for shops due to financial issues. Again, an octopus would definitely sort that job out. I think in this particular instance, since we are getting that octopus, we can probably completely skip recruiting the Cyclops, which also would have essentially kind of traded out time-wise. As far as initial recruits go, we possibly don't even need to actually keep them in the long run. So considering that this entire thing was done without any casualties, if we kind of treat that as the norm, it's probably faster to go fire units rather than having them clog up the menu, which also probably saves a little bit of time. And additionally, this means that there's less moving spells around in those cases that you want to actually use one of them. Additionally, the whole thing with Mother's Mercy, that probably lost a couple minutes as well, since I did end up picking up a Cleric Mark early, and then just used it too early to get Mother's Mercy. I think it shows up at like 30 or something. So just do that right before going into the final boss there. Just to make sure that you have it for sure. Same thing with keeping an extra Night Mark on hand, so that also would have definitely saved some time as well. Also, I was expecting to do the spellcasting method, so there was about 10 minutes. That also could have been saved by just simply going in with the right build to the final boss there as well. Just go for Shield Brynhildr and this setup right here exactly. It might go faster or slower, but taking that left tile to go knock your doppelganger off a cliff, and then just using the sword is roughly on par with trying to do the summon method. Additionally, there was actually one more thing that could have been done to optimize this. So I had Instill Ice on him. What I probably should have done is actually pick up Instill Dark. So Instill Dark would have helped to shield him a bit earlier on. So if we go, or sorry, Instill Shadow. So either way, that'll give us Dark Touched and Dark Attuned, which would end up reducing the power of some of those final attacks from the boss there. I don't know if this necessarily would potentially go better if we, for example, used our third and final Light Charm and then use this shield over here. I feel like we still would probably end up taking more, but I don't have the same to verify this. So I think this would help, because this would give the Brynhildr a bit more punch. It would technically make us a bit weaker versus some of his attacks, but the Shadow should essentially mitigate most of that. So I think this would help, but I'm not 100% certain. So anyways, with that said, I think that's more or less everything that would have been done here. So I think it can work, and yeah, I'm gonna have to do some testing to make sure, but I think it can be done. So there's that. Also, technically, I mean, I guess we also have the option of replacing our Knight at the time with Volkert to get a little bit of a stat and speed advantage, but I'm not necessarily sure that that would help that much, because it is additional menuing, and really your regular Knight is, like, Voltaire is basically the same as Volkert. There's a slight speed difference, but it really doesn't matter in that particular instance. So yeah, yeah, I'll test it again and kind of let you know how it goes. Part of this is just to kind of leave notes for myself in case I forget. Alright, y'all have yourselves a good one. Take care. Bye.